lives the last few days. I've been putting them off for many years because I don't like doing lives. But I just wanted to do this video because we have, hi Carly, because we have a week left until the summit. And I've been wanting to do this post for actually quite a long time because I recorded a video about 4 years, nearly 5 years ago. Hello everyone joining. I recorded a video nearly 5 years ago on what is Heart of the Rose, what is this path of the rose, and I haven't done that since then. So I thought, since the summit is happening in a week, I just wanted to share what is Heart of the Rose, what is this rose lineage in my experience, what is Brotherhood of the Rose, what are all these things that I've been creating and being shown to birth these last few years. So those who have been to some of my workshops before or done any of my courses will maybe know this story, but I'll just start from the beginning in relation to this rose path. So my own journey, I learned to meditate when I was 18, and I loved it so much that I started teaching very soon after it. I then had a very profound awakening in my early 20s, where the personal self, Sophie, that I'd taken myself to be, spontaneously dissolved, and I experienced myself as no thing, no person. I was suddenly everything and yet no thing in particular. It was a very profound experience when I was doing a walking meditation that didn't leave me for 3 weeks. And what stayed with me was this stillness, this ever-present stillness from that time. And at the time, I was training to be a psychotherapist, and I was finding it really hard to understand how can I hold this very real truth, an experience that I had just experienced, that I was no self, that I was beyond this personal identity, and hold my very real client stories. And I sought a teacher at that time to give language to what I was experiencing, and she said, hold the story, but hold it lightly. So that has kind of been my mantra throughout my 20s. How do we hold the story? How do we hold our humanity and embrace our humanity without bypassing, without trying to transcend, without thinking we're somehow more than, and also hold and experience this very real truth that we are both beyond and part of this conditioned mind. That God is both beyond and within all of life, and you are that. So that took me on my own journey. I then trained for the next 3 years as a psychotherapist, whilst ever more deeply resting in and as this silence I had experienced. I'm not going to go into too much detail on any of that just right now because I'm going to focus on Heart of the Rose, but that happened in my 20s, and I went on a very deep initiation, and also started to understand that this lineage that I got drawn to after I had this awakening, which was this non-dual lineage, neti, I'm not this, I'm not that, I started to see and realize that that was actually missing something. That yes, I had experienced I was not this mind, I was not this body, and yet I still had trauma held in this body. I still had difficult times in my life. It didn't really give me the tools. Yes, I could see I wasn't ultimately that, and yet I was living in a world that needed me to be both and. And it wasn't actually that helpful to stay as awareness all the time, that I also needed to bring that awareness down and into my humanity. Bring that love down into my humanity. And for me, this is the rose path. Those that have come to my classes know I speak a lot about this, that we have been inherently very transcendental and masculine in our approach to awakening. And this will lead to the Heart of the Rose and the Brotherhood of the Rose. But we've been very transcendent. We have somehow unconsciously put God outside of ourselves as something to get to, as someone to reach. By doing that, by putting God as a man in the sky unconsciously, we have unconsciously rejected this body, our emotions, our sexuality, as somehow less than, that we somehow need to get up and out to reach this divinity. And this is why we are seeing everything we're seeing on the earth right now, because we have become inherently disembodied and disconnected, because we have sought the sacred out there. In truth, the sacred cannot be separate from matter. Inherent to matter is the sacred, is consciousness. And yet we have been conditioned to believe that somehow spirit is separate from matter. This is why the rose has come now, because this is the path of embodiment. It's a path of descent. It's the path of embodying, awakening to the inherent light that we are, the inherent awareness and unconditional presence that we are, beyond this limited form, without negating the form, and bringing this unconditional love down into this form. It's about going up the mountain and coming back down. And for me, this is the rose. And so after I graduated, becoming a psychotherapist, I then came back and started teaching more, running more retreats on what I called the kindest thing, which is how do we awaken to the stillness that we are beyond this limited mind, and how do we bring that presence, bring that stillness down and into all aspects of our humanity, so that all parts of ourselves that have been lost or distorted through all time, space and dimensions can start to come home. I'm really cutting a lot of this out just because I don't want this to be too long a live. Thank you everyone who's joining. But that was my own journey. And then in 2021, I had an astrologer and she said, on this night, your north node, Saturn will cross your north node Aquarius and you'll get shown your destiny. And in my mind, I felt like I'd already knew my destiny, because at the age of 18, I had this very clear vision where my soul had incarnated onto this land and into this family, and I was to build this temple of light, and what I had dedicated myself to doing for that time, my 20s, and training as a psychotherapist to build a foundation in myself, to teach more, and all these things. But that night, what happened was I went to sleep, and I went in and out of consciousness that night, chanting, the way of the rose, the way of the rose, the way of the rose. And it was like my whole body was starting to call back this cellular memory, these timelines through infinite lifetimes of this way of the rose. I had no idea what the way of the rose was. I woke up and I Googled the next morning, what is the way of the rose? Luckily something came up and I was like, oh, okay, it's a lineage. I understood it was a lineage, and over time in the last few years I've understood it's a lineage that comes from Venus, this divine feminine way of beauty and love that comes from Venus, that came from Venus and existed in Lemuria as the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of the Rose, and then existed in many different forms. It existed in Lemuria, it existed in Atlantis, it existed in the mystery schools of Isis. It existed at the time of the Essenes with Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It existed in the time of the Cathars. It existed at the time of the Knights of the Templar. And it's now having a rebirth now. And when I read this, for me, and understood this, it still felt a little bit abstract. I was like, yeah, but what is the way of the rose? Great, it's a lineage. People have known about it for a while in different forms. What is it? And so I asked my guides, I said, what is the way of the rose? And they said, it is the path of embodied love. And for me, I was like, oh, this makes sense. This is kind of what I had been teaching, the kindest thing. How do we awaken to the one that we are beyond the mind? And how do we bring that kindness? How do we start to embody that love down Not try and transcend the mind, not try and transcend the body. Yes, become aware that we are more than just our mind, but also recognize the mind is also an expression of this consciousness, that all of matter, mother, is an expression of consciousness and holy and sacred. I then got shown by the land, my family's land, a few months later to birth a festival. I was going to do a festival called Awaken Festival, an embodied non-duality festival, but lockdown happened, it all got very confusing. And so I went to pray to the cedar tree in the land. I said, what do you want? And suddenly I had this vision. And again, I'm making this very short story. I had this vision that suddenly women were everywhere. And I got shown it would be a women's festival. And the guidance said, if you do a women's festival, the women will come and support. So I was like, okay, I guess it's a women's festival. And I was like, I guess it's called The Way, the Rose. And then the guidance came that no, it was to be called Heart of the Rose. So that started happening. That happened in 2021. It was seeded. We had 50 epic women come and seed it. And then it started to grow to my own detriment. To be fair, I got super sick in everything I've done and all the ways I've held this and how it's grown, because there was a lot of resistance. Although the land wanted it, there was a lot of resistance in my own ancestry, because I would be the first woman to inherit this land. It's big for feminine to come up again and come into sovereignty. It's big on all levels. So there was a lot of resistance, infinite on infinite dimensions that I have to clear in order to get this going. But it's going, and it has become beautiful, and so many women have been so touched by it, and it's been incredible. And for me, the festival is this remembrance of this ancient yet new way of being together as women, because we have been conditioned to forget our power, and yet it is our power that is most needed on the planet. It is our embodiment that is most needed on the planet, because whereas for men, this is not to make men wrong, men can find God. It's easier for them to conceptualize, because the masculine is inherently conceptual and intellectual in nature, but we've become overly conceptual and intellectual. And the path of the feminine is a path of embodiment. For us as women, spirit and matter can never be separate. We are inherently synced to the cycles of the moon, to the cycles of the earth, very different to men. And so it's our role now to remember this inherent connection to each other and to all of life, and to be the way shows of this path. And I believe that's why I did get shown to do Heart of the Rose first, but the women needed to awaken first. It was their time to awaken, because there's a beautiful Sufi, I always use this quote, Llewellyn Bournley. He says, women contain within their selves the seed of creation differently from men, because whether or not they choose to give birth to life, they can bring the light of matter down and into form differently from men, because they can literally give birth. And when women remember this power, whether or not they choose to give birth or not, they remember it for all of creation. And so it's why we're being called as women to remember this inherent power and our inherent connection to spirit, to all of life, so that all of life can start to remember again. And so this was the intention for Heart of the Rose. Not only that, but in my own experience, I'd been to a lot of satsangs due to my own awakening that happened. And yet when I went to these satsangs, no one ever spoke about menstruation, grief, birth, sexuality. It was always just like, I'm not this, I'm not that. And yet I went to lots of women's circles, and I never really got people sharing or heard people speak about this transcendent and infinite stillness that we are beyond and beneath this form. So for me, Heart of the Rose is this bridging between how do we have satsang, how do we awaken to the inherent stillness of our being and embody the stillness and work with the cycles and work with this body our soul has chosen to incarnate into, because our soul's inherently genderless. This is not about women or men are better or anything like that. It's just simply embracing and honoring the bodies we have chosen, and maybe it may be no gender, that is welcome too, but it's about honoring what is for us and bringing the love that we are down and into it. So that has been running, that was running for a few years and grew as well. Thank you again for those who are listening. I'm just going to change the settings. That was happening a few few years, and then last year I had this strong guidance where I was reflecting how beautiful Heart of the Rose had been, and I was reflecting that there wasn't at the time that I knew about anything like that for men. There wasn't a really big gathering with infinite beautiful teachers from around the world who were kind of leaders in their teaching and sharing. And I suddenly had this massive download, like a lightning bolt, and it said you are to birth a men's festival, and it is to be called Brotherhood of the Sun, and it's to happen over summer solstice, and it will be the brother to Heart of the Rose. And I was like, oh my God, really? You want me to, like, not only like, do you want me to birth? I was already full up with Heart of the Rose. That was already too much for my nervous system, on top of teaching, on top of running retreats, on top of everything, psychotherapy. But the guys were like, no, you're to create this men's festival. And I was like, oh God, what projection am I going to get for doing that? Understandably so. Who am I as a woman to birth a men's festival? But they said you are to birth it. And so I started in motion. Okay, how am I to create Brotherhood of the Sun? What on earth does that look like? And I started moving towards it. Like, oh God. And then I got the guidance, this year you're to call it Brotherhood of the Rose, because it is only meant to be for those men who truly understand it is through integrating and honouring their heart, their rose being an expression of the heart, their rose heart, can they step fully into their solar masculine kingdom. So that was a really clear message. It said, first year it needed to be Brotherhood of the Rose, because it was only those men who truly understood it is through integrating their own feminine, their own heart, their own rose, remembering that connection, could they then awaken to their true sun, solar kingdom, and be a brother festival to Heart of the Rose. So that was a whole journey in itself, which I won't go into too much detail around, but that was very profound. We did a summer solstice seed gathering, which was very beautiful. Charlie, who's listening, hello Charlie, was at that. It was, yeah, profound in infinite ways. I then birthed Rose Temple at Medicine, and Medicine got in touch. They were like, we'd like you to do something, like, do you want to do a day where it's just women's festival? Do you want a women's kind of pop-up, or do you want to do a temple for the feminine? And after being shown to Brotherhood of the Rose, I was like, I want to do a temple for the feminine, because for me the most exciting and alive thing at that time was to share with everyone that this rose path wasn't just for women, that yes, the women needed to awaken first on some level, because we have been so conditioned to forget our power, and yet this feminine aspect of God, this feminine aspect of consciousness has been repressed within all of us, within all of life, and especially in men. But it's not spoken about enough, because the men have had to also repress their feminine, their emotions, their heart. They've had to go to war, they've had to shut down in some way, and yet we need more than ever to start to feel safe, for everyone to start to feel safe, to go down and into the body again, to go down and into the heart. And so this rise of the feminine, this resurrection of the feminine, is not just for women, and the rose is an ally in this, and this is what I learned last year. And also that women are here to initiate men back into their hearts, those who choose, and that this used to be an ancient rites of passage that used to happen in the Egyptian mystery schools and many other places, that women would initiate men back into the body, back into their hearts, because women were the wayshowers of this path. And the rose is our guide and teacher, and she's coming at this time for us all to awaken to this path of embodied love, beyond gender, beyond form. She is unconditional. And what I started to realize is this rose path more and more, is this rose path isn't about women or men, masculine or feminine. Ultimately, it's really about the path of sacred union. So as I mentioned, before I got shown to Heart of the Rose, I got shown to do a festival called Awaken Festival. This embodied non-duality festival was going to be called Awaken, and it was really clear. I got shown it in 2019, really clearly. But then I got shown to Heart of the Rose, and I was so confused, because my visions are always so clear and usually very in alignment and very true. But what I started to realize after being shown Brotherhood of the Rose is that actually all of it was leading to Awaken Festival. But it really ultimately reflected the deeper Kundalini awakening experience we're all going through on a personal and a collective level, where the feminine wakes up, the feminine snake at the base of the spine wakes up the masculine, and together they start to clear the density and distortion held in the chakras and start to awaken the pineal gland and start to enlighten the body, mind and soul. And that this Heart of the Rose and Brotherhood of the Rose are actually all leading to this Awaken Festival as an archetypal symbolic reflection of this journey we each all going on in terms of integrating and healing our inner feminine, our inner masculine, this path of ultimately Heroes Gamma sacred union within and without, so we can become these new humans, these ancient yet new humans that are fully embodied, that no longer are we wanting to transcend the body, but actually ascend with the body, to descend the light that we are down into the body, descend the love that we are down into the body, clear all distortion that the mind has held, all fear, all trauma held in the mind body, and start to resurrect the body back into its true inherent divine blueprint, true cellular enlightenment. And actually, it was a few years ago the guide said it's time to start teaching on the rose and cellular enlightenment, because it's so important as we see this transhumanist agenda occur, that we also are starting to really remember the power and potential of these bodies, the miraculous power and potential of these bodies, when we truly dissolve the mind into the heart and allow the body to awaken to its inherent natural ability of health, abundance, joy, pleasure, all these things. And the rose is our teacher in this. She is showing us all the power of what it is to not only be in our divine masculine, our thorns and our boundaries, but also so we can do that, so we can feel safe to blossom again, so we can feel safe to open to this unconditional love that we inherently are. So I just wanted to share this. I could go into so much more detail. I teach for like 2.5, 3 hours on this specific topic, but I wanted to give a glimpse because we have this summit coming up next week. And it was really interesting because last year I was so burnt out from doing Heart of the Rose and everything that I've been doing. And I didn't know what to do this year. I was like, should we do Heart of the Rose, or should I not do anything at all? And I went into very deep prayer and I said, what do you want? And it was on Epiphany. It's so ironic because it's autumn equinox tomorrow, so it's perfect wheel of the cycle, wheel of the year. And on in Epiphany, I just got shown it is time to take it online, and it is time to connect the global Rose Sisterhood community. And so that is what I've been doing, seeding and weaving and dreaming and visioning and listening to how this wants to take form. The specific guidance was it's time to connect the global Rose community to help the reactivation of the Divine Mother Grid in preparation for the birth of this new age. So big vision. And we have an epic lineup of incredible teachers that will be sharing. So not only is this an opportunity to learn about this rose lineage, but it is also an opportunity to gather with other sisters and brothers. This was a really important piece. It originally said sisterhood, but then it changed and said whole rose family. Because the men are also waking up too, and I've had so many beautiful men come to me in the last few years saying, the rose, I've been waking up to the rose, what is the rose, why is she calling? And it's beyond gender, she's calling us all because she's a reflection of the Divine Mother. In the original Aramaic prayer, that was our Mother and Father in heaven, but we have written out the Mother, and she is coming to return, and the rose lineage is one lineage in which she is returning through. So yeah, the summit is not only a place for education, to learn about these different aspects of the mystery school lineage of the rose that has existed in many forms through many lifetimes and timelines on this earth and beyond. But there's also a place to gather. So I really wanted to encourage people not just to watch it at home alone, but to actually join in community. Because after doing Heart of the Rose over the last few years, it was amazing to see how many women came from all around the world, from America, from Canada, from South Africa, from Australia, or to be part of this gathering, because they didn't have this rose community where they were. So for me, it felt so important with this summit to start to invite these epic communities that are growing around the world, these Magdalene Rose communities that are starting to remember. We've had 2,000 years of Christ, we're about to have 2,000 years of Magdalene. Whether they were real people or whether they're archetypes, it's just a reflection of the deeper integration between our own inner masculine, inner feminine, mother, father, God, all of it. So yeah, really encouraging regional hosts and communities to gather and watch live together, because there's a lot that's been prophesied about these next 2 years. They're going to be really big. We're in a very big transitional time between 2012 and 2032. And it's why we had COVID in the middle. It's big. And so one of the reasons I believe in being shown to take it online and to start encouraging and creating a platform for these rose communities to join is because these are going to be needed in the coming years. These places of people that are in devotion to the remembrance of the feminine, to the remembrance of sacred union, to remembrance of the mother, the father, God within and without, holding this frequency of the heart, that these communities are going to be like lighthouses as we transition into this new age, holding and anchoring this new heaven on earth template. It's going to be very needed. And this summit is kind of, for me, a seed of that, one seed in many seeds that are happening across the world. Truly. And so this is why it feels really important. And what's really exciting about the summit is I'm also birthing this bigger online platform with two other sisters, Bianca and Ais, and we're going to be creating a global Rose mystery school with teachers to share throughout the world, events online and in person, and also this global Rose community that will bring all these communities that are awakening to the Rose together. And we have global prayer ceremonies, and we have global moon ceremonies, and just come together, both in person and online. It feels like it's going to be a very profound birth next weekend, and it feels very exciting and special to be sharing this live with this autumn equinox, new moon, eclipse portal. There's so much more I can share around this, but I just wanted to share a little live just to give a taste and a bit of understanding of what on earth am I doing? What have I been doing these last few years? Why is this important? Why is the Rose coming at this time? Why is it important that all of us remember? So I hope that it resonated. I'm sending you all lots of love. Thank you for all who joined. It's so sweet to see you. And I hope you can make it to the summit. We've got live and recorded tickets and in-person tickets. We're going to be meeting at Eridge and holding the flame here for this global Rose prayer ceremony, where we'll be lighting this Magdalene Rose candle around the world to help support the reactivation of this Divine Mother Grid, which is so needed on the planet at this time. She is here.